Welcome everyone to the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum's live web series, The Future of Apprenticeship in Canada. My name is Racine DeBartolo. I am the Outreach and Event Coordinator with the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, and I'm going to be your host this afternoon. Really great to see we've got great participation on the line today, one of our largest webinars. Welcome to all of our members who have joined us, and I do see that there are some new people who haven't attended one of our CAF events. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with our organization, we are a national non-for-profit organization that works with stakeholders in all regions of Canada. We influence pan-Canadian apprenticeship strategies through research, discussion, and collaboration, sharing insights across trades, across sectors, and across the country to promote apprenticeship as an effective model for training and education. Through our work, CAF has shed light on a number of key issues affecting apprenticeship, such as the perceived barriers to accessing and completing apprenticeship and the business case for apprenticeship training. So we're kicking off part one of our series today on the topic of on-the-job training and mentoring. We're excited to have our guest presenter, Graham Trafford from Mott Electric, join us. But before we welcome Graham, I'm pleased to introduce Emily Arrowsmith, our lead researcher here at the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, who will start us off this afternoon.
Great, thanks Racine. So I'm just going to give a bit of an overview of the topic of on-the-job training and mentoring prior to Graham's remarks, just to frame the issue a bit for the apprenticeship stakeholders. So at a part of our 2016 CAF conference, we had a Future of Apprenticeship session where we talked about some of the really big and pressing issues in apprenticeship in Canada. And over 300 stakeholders attended this session, and they shared, based on their experiences in their communities, their challenges, and they also shared best practices and solutions and ideas for future action. So at that event, we really discussed 8 key themes in apprenticeship, and the group really agreed that these are the really core issues and some of our main challenges and areas we need to work on within apprenticeship. And those 8 issues are employer engagement, on-the-job training and mentoring, which we're going to be talking about today, harmonization, completion, creating welcoming workplaces, career awareness, technology, and technical training. So those are the big 8 issues. So there were stakeholders who attended our conference session and really got into the topic of on-the-job training and mentoring, and they shared some of the challenges as an initial part of their discussion. And some of the main themes that emerged from that discussion really related to different generational and cultural differences that can affect the mentoring relationship. So sometimes when journey persons are mentoring and training apprentices, which is so important because really it's 80% of what apprenticeship training is, there can be some dynamics there that we need to grapple with and can be a challenge. So there's differences in training styles and learning, especially when we're in a situation with a multi-generational workforce. Sometimes expectations are not stated or shared. Journey persons might not know how to mentor, and they could be coming from a situation where they were trained extremely differently. And it's a challenge for them to know how to manage those two-way relationships. Stakeholders talked about apprenticeship and journey persons not maybe perhaps being in as close contact as they needed to be, and really making sure that the way they're communicating with each other is effective and productive. Stakeholders also talked about the issue of production pressures and advancing technologies. So journey persons on site are facing a lot of pressure. They have to get the job done on time and within budget, and they're also facing a lot of technological change in their trade, especially with the emergence of things like electric cars and green technology. That's putting a lot of pressure on them, and they have to be trained and learn all of these new technologies while still doing the job on time and within budget. So they're trying to learn new things and grapple with new ways of doing things, and then they've got to try and teach that to the apprentice. So that is a challenge for a lot of trades right now. Journey persons may struggle to learn the new thing itself, especially, you know, if it involves a lot of computers and technology that they might not be familiar with, and then, you know, they struggle to pass down that knowledge to the apprentice. Another issue that was raised is the feeling maybe that some employers are still might be struggling with recording all of the skills that are achieved on the job and making sure that all the required competencies on the job are being achieved. So those were some of the challenges around on-the-job training and mentoring that stakeholders talked about. Another theme in the dialogue findings was really that we need ways as the apprenticeship community to support employers. So a lot of the stakeholders who participated in the discussion talked a lot about the importance of sharing those best practices across the country, trying to make workplace training as effective as it can be, and really supporting opportunities for employer-to-employer learning. The people discussed a number of different ideas about recognizing the value of mentorship, raising its profile and professionalism of mentors, and a lot of different ideas were discussed. Some people talked about maybe providing mandatory credits or more training, reimbursing mentors, or otherwise recognizing their contribution. And stakeholders also discussed the idea of celebrating employers that have strong apprenticeship and mentoring programs, because as they acknowledged, it's 80% at least of apprenticeship training, if not more. So it's just so important to having highly trained apprentices, is to have that good mentorship and quality on-the-job training. Stakeholders really talked about this idea of, you know, making mentoring a part of the culture at every level within the company. Stakeholders that are part of the discussion also talked about the need to train mentors and to ensure that we're providing journey persons with the resources and the opportunities to learn how to be good mentors, because it's not just about the technical proficiency, it's about knowing how to teach other adults and to communicate effectively. Stakeholders discussed, you know, are there ways we could recognize really exceptional mentors and ensure these individuals have the skills they need through the necessary skills, training, and experience, and do really recognize that it is a part of the job that needs a special attention. Offer financial incentives for mentoring, offer webinars and workshops on training and mentorship specifically, and provide journey persons with the most up-to-date training and technology so they really feel comfortable when having to teach others these skills. Engaging apprentices in their own learning was another theme that was brought up in the discussion. So as stakeholders talked about the importance of holding an orientation for the apprentice right from the beginning, so they understand what their rights and responsibilities are as learners, and that they have to take some ownership over their own learning. They talked about utilizing maybe more advanced apprentices to coach new cohorts, and incorporating mentor training as a part of the in-school training so that apprentices understand while they're receiving training that they're going to have to teach others someday. Giving apprentices access to information on upcoming curriculum before training and identifying issues where they could focus on and obtain additional support was an idea that was raised during the discussion. Providing apprentices a list of where they should look when proactively seeking competency training. Creating awareness about the expectations, encouraging apprentices to look for an employer who is going to provide them with a good mentoring and training, focusing on improving communication between the generations. Obviously, apprentices have to play a role there too, as well as the journey person. And just making sure that we're communicating to this idea to apprentices that apprenticeship really is just the foundation to a journey of lifelong learning, and that the real journey is going to start when they get their ticket and have a chance to teach and mentor someone else. So just promoting the culture of mentoring to apprentices and really preparing them for their training and empowering them to ask for opportunities to learn new tasks. So this whole theme about apprentices need to take responsibility for their own learning was raised as a part of this whole discussion of on the job and mentoring in the skilled trades. Another theme that was discussed was the whole link between effective workplace communication, mentoring, and how this can help us address some of the barriers we might be experiencing around integrating underrepresented groups into skilled trades and into apprenticeships. And so the group talked very positively about how good and effective mentoring can improve workplace communication and can actually really help facilitate the integration of Aboriginal peoples and immigrants and women into skilled trades workplaces. And people talked about the importance of having maybe cultural mentors or professional development mentors and technical mentors. So in some cases it makes sense to have two mentors for individuals who are working in the skilled trades. A number of areas for further work were discussed. Stakeholders talked about promoting mentorship by all stakeholder groups working together, so employers, labor representatives, educators, and including journey persons and apprentices. We all have to work together across sectors and across trades to really promote the importance of effective mentorship and to really work together to promote and share best practices with one another. So the whole idea was raised as well of, with this new generation of apprentices, are there things about mentoring or our approach to teaching that we might have to tweak and adjust and change so that we're really ensuring that apprentices are being taught in an effective manner. Some people talked about this whole idea of creating a matching tool for apprentices and mentors, providing mandatory credits for mentoring, and are there ways that we could work together to ensure that there's greater consistency in mentoring across trades and sectors. So those are some key highlights and themes that emerged from the discussion at the Future of Apprenticeship session that specifically related to on-the-job training and mentoring. At this point, I'd like to introduce Graham Trafford from Mott Electric. He's going to share some of his thoughts about mentoring on the job. So just to introduce you to Graham, Graham is the general manager and part owner of Mott Electric, which is a full-service electrical contractor that's based in Burnaby, BC, with 3 Lower Mainland offices. Established in 1930, Mott Electric is one of the oldest and largest electrical contracting companies in the region and employs a dedicated team of over 400. A proud BCIT alumni member, Graham has been involved in the electrical industry for nearly 40 years. 4 years into his career, he joined Mott Electric as a journey electrician and has spent the last 35 years moving his way up the ranks to his present position. Inspired by his desire to give back to the trade, Graham is proud to dedicate his skills to a company that prides itself on core values that include not only its work, but safety, family, innovation, and giving back. A leader in the community, Mott is a consistent contributor to local schools, sports teams, and charities. Training and safety have always been at the forefront of Graham's career, and he presently sits on the following committees: the Electrical Joint Training Committee, the National Electrical Training Council, the Electrical Contractors Association of BC Vancouver chapter, and the Council of Construction Associations. So I'm very pleased to welcome Graham to the webinar today.
Thank you, Emily, and good afternoon and good morning. So for those of you on the west side of Canada, thank you for joining us today on this, I think, what's a very important subject to talk about for everyone that's involved with apprenticeship and training. So I'm just going to go into a little bit of Mott. So there's a picture of William Mott, who was a founder of Mott Electric on one of our first major projects, which is Batella Bridge that joins New Westminster to Surrey in the Lower Mainland. So that's around 1936, about 6 years after the company started. Rich history, been involved, Mott has been involved with training, right from the beginning. So I'll just go through a few of the points. Mott was originally founded in 1930, based in New Westminster. We're a third-generation family business. Dan Mott is currently the president, and we also have Dan's children involved in the business. So you never know, there may even get into a fourth generation. I certainly hope so. It would be a very proud moment for us to carry on that tradition. Mott has been a part of many major electrical projects in BC, commercial, institutional, industrial. We've done a lot of work for BC Hydro all across the province. We have been involved with transit, like things like the SkyTrain projects, those kind of things. We helped build some of the facilities for the Olympics, the 2010 Olympics. We have been a supporter of apprenticeship and training since the beginning. We actually, in our display case in our front reception area, have apprenticeship papers from a apprentice that was with us in 1948. He graduated to his journeyman status in 1948, and we ran across that. We were doing a project over on Vancouver Island, and his daughter happened to be at the facility we were working at. She saw the trucks, and she screamed and went running into the back and said, "Here, I found this paperwork of my dad's," and she gave it to us, and she was so happy to be able to give it to us, and we're so proud to be able to display that in our display case. It's hard to judge, but we kind of went back through some of our records and that, and we calculate that over 2,000 apprentices have attained their journey status while working at Mott. Obviously, we've grown over the years, but when we were a big industrial contractor, we had upwards of 300-400 people working in the field for us at any one time. One of the things that I'm also very proud of is the fact that we have many long-term employees. Our last newsletter that we did in December highlighted employees that we have working for us, both in the office and in the field, that are, right the way up to 40 years. We have one of our project manager estimators who started straight out of BCIT, and he's been with us ever since. And we just celebrated last year his 40 years with the company. So Mott Electric today. Currently Mott has 3 offices in the Lower Mainland area of BC. We have 2 offices in Burnaby and 1 in downtown Vancouver. Presently we have over 350 apprentices and journeys working for us. As I touched on before, we're working on a widely diversified range of projects, from, like I said, industrial, institutional, commercial, BC Hydro, and over the last 20 years we've gotten into the high-rise residential market, which has really helped us over the last little while with getting what's going on in BC right now is a lot of mixed-use projects where commercial, office, and retail and residential are all going in the one development, and that's all popping up around the transit stations. We're presently working on a project up at Brentwood Town Centre that's it's approaching just under $50 million for the electrical, and that's towers, residential high-rise towers, 2 at 64 stories, 1 at 54, and then a full mall and parkade. This project is going to go on for 10 years. Eventually they plan to build 13 towers on that site and redevelop the mall, and then plus a bunch of facilities for the city of Burnaby, a community center, and various things like that. Last year, Mott's revenue was in the $70 million range. I think we're going to be a little bit higher than that this year. We're always looking at training opportunities. Our head office in Burnaby has a training center that we use on a regular basis. I can come in here on any given Saturday, and there's usually a course going on in our training room of both journeys and apprentices. Because we have the luxury of having that diversified project portfolio, we use that to help our apprentices get a full scope of training in the electrical trade. We can move them from commercial to industrial work into BC Hydro. Right now we presently have 150 people working on a project for TELUS, which is getting fiber into commercial, multi-residential facilities around the province. And those apprentices are getting training on fiber optic termination, splicing, all sorts of things like that I don't think too many other contractors our size are tackling and giving that opportunity to apprentices. So I think it really helps us. I think one of the themes Emily talked about was trying to get more training for apprentices, and I don't think a lot of companies have that opportunity. The apprentice gets to a point and they say, well, I'm not learning anything new. I need to go somewhere where I can learn some new stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're successful, is we're able to move people between our different divisions to provide them that full scope of training. One of the other things that we really like to encourage is innovation. We had a former long-term employee with us. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a master at looking at things in different ways and coming up with new ideas to do things. We thought we would honor his memory by creating an annual award that would encourage our people to be innovative, to come up with new ideas, and both in labor saving and safety and all sorts of other things. And it's been very successful. We get a lot of submissions throughout the year, and then we have a committee that sits down and reviews them and rates them, and then we also share those ideas with people throughout the company, so that everybody gets an opportunity to take a look at what's happening on some of the other job sites. As Emily touched on, 80% of the learning for an apprentice comes on the job site. How do we best take advantage of that opportunity to teach? We really need to understand as employers and as teachers and trainers that that's where we need to take the biggest advantage of that on-the-job training is on the job site. I mean, as a general manager of a company, I can't be on every job site, but I have to be a leader who encourages training and innovation. When I go to the job sites, I talk to the foreman about, different apprentices and what opportunities they're getting, and I also make sure that you know, the apprentices know that they can contact me directly if they feel that they need to, and that they can have you know, I can have an open door and encourage them to discuss training. I mean, as a company, you put people where they fit for you the best, you know, and you also have to understand the productivity side of your business, that you can't always put people where they want to be all the time. But you also have to keep in the back of your mind that that apprentices, you know, it's better for you in the long run if you give that apprentice a full scope training, and they become, you know, a journey person that has a lot of experience on different parts of the trade. I mean, I've just been through a process over the last few days with one of our divisions of identifying apprentices that have created an opportunity for themselves by their hard work and their you know, diligence in showing up on the job site on time and being a real star, I guess, if in other words. And so we've identified a few of them, and now we're starting to move them around into other parts of the business and giving them that opportunity. So it's tough on foremen sometimes. I get a lot of grumbling about when I say I'm gonna move that apprentice, and well, he's really good, I don't want you to move him, I just got him where I want him to be. But most of our foremen and supervisors understand the big picture, that yes, there's a bit of short-term pain for that long-term gain if you just pigeonhole an apprentice in a very narrow scope of the trade, that they're not going to be the journeyman you want them to be when they finally finish their apprenticeship. And like I said a bit earlier, the apprentices need to know that opportunities are earned. You need to show up to work hard, you know, be smart when you work, but when you put that out there to them, you have to be sure to follow through on that. If you've raised that as an opportunity for them, then you want to make sure that you don't forget about that, and that you also hold up your end of the bargain and are able to move them on to other things and keep that learning going. One of the really important things I think we need to do when we're in training is we need to measure it. Like, what does effective training look like? Again, Emily raised some of that as what came out of the CAF conference last year. Is you know, there needs to be a system in place to confirm that on-the-job training is happening, that the apprentices are learning the skills that they need to learn to be successful. You know, we are associated with the Electrical Joint Training Committee. I sit on the chair of that committee, and we've been going through some processes over the last few years of trying to do a better job of measuring training that's happening on the job. We're looking at you know, we're doing on the online feedback from the apprentices and from the journey persons, just to try and define what actually happens. Like it's a real, you know, it's very difficult for some employers to be able to get down and see, you know, what's happening on the ground. And I think you have to have a system in place. Whatever that looks like, it may be different for different employers and different trades, but there has to be a system in place that you have a core group of competencies for your trade, and you have to make sure that your apprentices are achieving those core competencies. If you don't, you know, you haven't properly measured that apprenticeship, and it really is going to become a difficult thing when you have a journey person that really doesn't have the core of their trade in their apprenticeship. So one of the easiest things I've been able to do is I ask for feedback from the apprentices, and I ask them, are you learning? Have you got this? Do you understand what's going on here? And you have to be prepared to act on that feedback. If you listen to them and you don't do anything, then you might as well not listen to them. And the person at the end of the day who signs off on the apprentice has to be confident on their skills. They have to make sure that when you're signing that piece of paper to give them their journey status, that they have the skills to be successful as a journey as they move on through the rest of their career. The next part of our discussion here is about mentorship. Here's a group of young guys that were on a project with us, another big mixed-use project called Marine Gateway. They were on there for close to 3 years. You see them on the slab. We're on the slab there, but the two young men on the outside have now just recently graduated their apprenticeship, and their journeys working for us on the Brentwood project, working on distribution, fire alarm, some other parts of that site. But they spent a lot of their apprenticeship doing slab work and understanding the basics of what mentorship is all, or sorry, what apprenticeship is all about. Before I get into the keys to mentorship, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a recent survey that was completed with about 140 electrical contractors across the province of BC, and the business outcomes that those contractors are looking for, I'll just name a few here. Maintaining high service product quality, increasing productivity, efficiency of workers, improving health and safety, reducing cost wastage, improving revenue and market share. And of those 5 that I just talked about, the first one, maintaining high service and product quality, 100% of those contractors surveyed said it was very important or important. So you understand, as businesses, the importance of these things and how do you get them. And I think the key to that is mentorship. How do you train the next generation to be, provide that high quality product, do their best in service for your customers. So I think the key to that is, again, something Emily talked on a little bit, was the role of the mentor. Like, we've all, I was an apprentice. I went through my apprenticeship, and I had some good journeys, and I had some not so good journeys that I worked for. And they provided us with learning opportunities, maybe differently, but the ones that were good knew how to teach. They knew how to be a mentor. So you really have to define that role of the mentor. What is that role of the mentor? What are they supposed to do? And then you have to provide training and support for them. You can't just expect that everybody is going to be able to go out there and be a mentor. And we are through, I'm switching my hat now to the Electrical Joint Training Committee. We have a program called Mentorship Matters that we started about 3 years ago, and it's a program that teaches mentorship, and it teaches mentors how to be mentors, and it also teaches mentees how to learn. It goes through, the effective communication is really the most important thing, and how do you teach, and how do you teach across generations, how do you teach across cultures. Different people learn in different ways. So for us at the EJTC, it's been a really effective program, and we're starting to roll that out to other trades and other areas across Canada, and even down into the States. That Mentorship Matters is being used right right the way across the trade scope. Different trades. We've even taught at University of BC as a big cohort of not only tradespeople but other people in training, and they purchased a program from the EJTC and use it out there for training their staff on how to be a mentor and also how to learn. Once you go through all this, you need to recognize the mentors who perform at the highest level. Like the EJTC does a banquet every 2 years, and at that banquet we ask our graduating apprentices who are the mentors that made the difference to them, who are the ones that really took the time and effort to teach them and that they learned the most from. And we recognize those people at that banquet. Typically there's 100 to 150 people at that banquet, and the proud looks on the faces of those journeys that are being recognized for the work that they've done in teaching and mentoring apprentices is really something to behold. You have to understand that not everyone will make a good mentor. There's some people that they weren't taught very well when they were an apprentice, and they're not about to change that. So, you'd like to think that everybody can do it, but they can't, and maybe you just have to move on sometimes when you understand that person isn't being a good mentor and they're not helping that apprentice. A diversity of experience is the best teacher. I really think that is. I mean, you need to get, every trade has all sorts of different core competencies in it, and you need to learn that in every trade. And I found this quote and I thought it was really good. True mentors don't make their mentees a clone of themselves, which really means, like, that speaks to that diversity a little bit too. Like, not everybody learns the same and not everybody teaches the same, and don't try and make the person you're teaching be exactly like you, because I don't think you'll like the result at the end of the day. So how to be a mentee? As with mentors, some mentees must be taught to learn. With the Mentorship Matters program, we start with the early apprentices, right, when they're either pre-apprentice or their first term, and it's mandatory for them to go to the Mentorship Matters program. It's 4 hours on a Saturday. They go to our training center. They go through it. We, because the JTC holds the indentureship for all the apprentices that work for signatory contractors right now, that's about 700 apprentices. They have a bit of a stick, so if the apprentices don't make it to that training, they don't get their pay increase. So when their term is up and they haven't been to the training, then they have to come in and talk to the training director about why. And it's really important for them to do that. And then at the end of their apprenticeship, when they're in their 7th or 8th term, they're taught how to be mentors through this same Mentorship Matters program, but it does it from the other end. So we're hoping after 5 years of this program, when all of our apprentices have graduated, they've all either learned how to be a mentee and also are taught how to be a mentor as well. Through this program, the mentees must be encouraged to ask questions. They must have some patience. They must, like, I know some of the younger generation, and I'm sure some of the older generation, were very impatient. They want to learn everything right now. It doesn't happen, as we've talked about before. Most of the learning starts when you become a journey person. You're going to learn the core basics through your apprenticeship, but you really start to learn when you're when you become a journey person. A positive mentor-mentee relationship encourages an apprentice to stay with their employer. I know that was a bit of a theme at the CAF conference. That I train this apprentice and I get them so far, and then off they go someplace else. Part of that could be the fact that they're not getting the full scope learning, or maybe the relationship they have with their journey is not positive, and they're just frustrated and they want to move on. I mean, as a company that's Mott's been around for so many years, we've lost a lot of people to other companies, to other industries. But you know, I used to be upset by that. I'm not so upset by that anymore. It just means I think we've done a really good job of teaching people, and that you know, when one of our you know, longtime employees, or you know, someone that's gone through an apprenticeship with us and become a journey ends up at a facility on the Port of Vancouver, and they want an electrical contractor to come and do some work for them, who do they call? So you know, yeah, you can be upset by that, and it is probably for smaller companies it hurts a lot more. But also at the end of the day, I think you know, if you're doing things right and people follow through their full apprenticeship with you, and they become a journey and they move on, you know, maybe you've done your job properly, and it's not always easy pill to swallow, but it's kind of the way the apprenticeship system works, is there is a lot of mobility when it comes to apprenticeship. So what's a few takeaways that we can take from today? I think you know, provide a diversified learning environment is really key. Like, whatever you can do for some of the smaller companies, you know, maybe you have niche markets that you work in, and that's all you do. Well, you know, if there's anything that you can do, maybe have a partnership with another contractor that you could share apprentices to allow them that opportunity to learn. If there's someone that is that important for you to hang on to, you know, you might allow them to go away for a little bit and learn some new and different stuff, you know, and encourage them to come back when they get their papers. I think there's different ways to try and get that for the smaller companies. For the bigger companies, I don't think that should be an issue, that you should be able to provide that diversified learning environment. The next point that I have here is always measure the training. If it's not measured, you don't know whether it's happening properly or not. Come up with a system that works best for you to measure that training. You know, maybe through a training committee like we work, or maybe within the company. There may be, you know, like I said, there may be companies that are in a niche market that have certain objectives that they want to make sure their people reach. Well, you know, write those down. Make sure that that you have that interaction with the apprentice, and ask them for their feedback, and get that you know, down on paper, so you understand at the end of it that apprentice has got their full scope of the basics for their apprenticeship. And the last thing I have is consider a formalized mentorship program. I talked about mentorship matters, but that's not only where it has to be. I understand, I just heard actually yesterday that Industry Training Authority in BC looks like that mentorship is going to go into the electrical curriculum for early, I think, either first year or first or second year apprentices, and again into the fourth year apprenticeship program. That to me, that's a great thing. That's really, I've pushed that over the years to try, and that should be part of a mentorship, should be part of the apprenticeship program. We need to push you know, our training authorities and our governments to say this is a really critical component of apprenticeship, and we need to formalize it, whether it's through a Mentorship Matters program or one of the other ones that are out there, you know, across the country, or whether it's done through the actual apprenticeship curriculum that's being taught at schools across the country. We need to get that in the program. We need to make sure that we do teach people how to be mentees, and also teach people how to be mentors. So that's all I've got today for everyone. Hopefully you've got something out of that, and I really appreciate your time. And I think we're going to switch it back over and do some questions now.
Yes, thank you so much, Graham, and also to Emily for taking the time to share all this information with us. Now we do, like Graham mentioned, we do have time to answer a few questions. So if you do have a question, please do enter it through the webinar control panel. If we don't get to your question, we'll definitely do our best to follow up with you following the webinar. So Graham, one of the first questions that came in was, does your mentoring program deal with things outside of the technical aspects of the trade?
Yeah, the 6 steps to learning is you identify the point of the lesson, you link the lesson, demonstrate the skill, provide the opportunity for practice, so give feedback and assess progress. So, those are all technical ideas, but I think it really focuses on the communication, right? How do you communicate that? And that's not the technical side. I think that's really the key to what where the breakdown maybe sometimes in that relationship happens is communication. So, effective communication, active listening, receiving feedback, asking questions, different learning styles, and setting goals. So it steps away, the program steps away from the technical side and gets into that the communication side of things very thoroughly.
Thank you. One of the other questions we had was your mentorship program developed in-house, or is it a training program that you found from another source? And where would you suggest that others could find potentially outlines of effective mentorship programs that they could start basing their own programs off of?
So what we did with our mentorship program, there's an organization in BC called Skill Plan, and they had the basics mentorship program, and basically the 6 steps that I talked about a couple of minutes ago was part of that. What we did was we partnered with Skill Plan, and we made a substantial investment to customize that training, to customize the mentorship program to fit our needs. So yes, there was a basic program out there. Mentorship Matters is still a joint venture between the Electrical Joint Training Committee and Skill Plan, and we've been at the last 2 CAF conferences, had a booth there to promote it and show what the program looks like. So that's where we found ours. There may be other organizations out there like Skill Plan that have a basic mentorship program in place, but it is going to take an investment, on your part to customize it to the way you need it as well. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution out there. There's some basic ones that may have to be adapted to a particular trade or industry.
Thank you so much, Graham. I do see that we did get some other questions just now. We do want to share some resources and tools with you before the end of the webinar today. So like I mentioned, we will follow up with you following the webinar. So Emily, I am going to pass it over to you if you just give me a moment. Hi, Emily. Sorry, you're off mute there. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Emily, to just talk about some of the CAF tools and resources that we have for people interested in learning more about on-the-job training and mentoring.
Great. Thank you, Racine. So if you're really inspired and want to learn more about mentoring, the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum has some really neat resources that I'd like to share with you. So we actually did a whole research project about mentoring best practices, and we went out into the field and we talked to employers and journey persons and apprentices about what it means to be an effective mentor and to have quality on-the-job training. And so those employers, journey persons, and apprentices gave really practical tips and strategies about what they do on the job. So journey persons and employers gave us actual concrete examples of how they structure their orientations and training plans to really promote effective learning on the job for apprentices. So we've gathered all of those best practices into our report, Effective Journey Person Apprentice Mentoring on the Job. We also had a national dialogue with apprenticeship stakeholders, and we gathered further feedback from them on what we need to be doing around mentoring in the community. So we also have that dialogue report, which is really useful. And we also have Making It Work booklets. They're waterproof, small booklets. You can just put them in your pocket. And they do talk about the journey person-apprentice relationship, and they have some good practices that you could use on the job for managing the relationship and promoting really good on-the-job training. So we have that resource as well.
Thanks so much, Emily. We also have our employer handbook and our new apprenticeship brochure. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure, yeah. So with our employer handbook, we fully realize that employers might not want to go and read really detailed research reports. So what we did is we took all the key findings from our employer-related research and all our best practices from employer champions, and we put them into one document, our employer handbook. And if you're interested in learning more about employer champion best practices, they're all summarized in that employer handbook, as well as some practical tips and strategies that employers could possibly use on the job to improve their on-the-job training for apprentices. If you're just beginning to learn about apprenticeship as an employer and you're not really sure what it is, we also have a really great pamphlet about apprenticeship that just kind of introduces some of the key terms and explains the concept of mentorship and points you in the right direction of some high-level resources and programs that you might want to know about. So those are our suite of tools that we have for employers specifically, really geared towards an employer audience, and will provide them with a lot of practical, concrete information that would really help them either start or implement an effective apprenticeship program.
Super. And what about the Skilled Trades Network? This is a new tool that we're developing on the CAF website.
Yeah, so the Skilled Trades Network's a really cool tool. It's centralized information. So it's really one-stop shop for everything you need to know about apprenticeship, and we have a whole section devoted to employer resources. And as a part of the employer resources, there's information on the business case, how to recruit apprentices, and also there's a whole section on mentoring and training. And so what we're trying to do with the Skilled Trades Network is really centralize employer best practices. And so for employers who might be just starting out and they're not really sure how they should set up their program or what they should do, we're going to give them an easy one-stop shop so they can access the best practices. It's really going to help improve their programs. We also, as a part of the a Skilled Trades Network, have a great series of videos and podcasts, and our employer champions do participate in those podcasts, and it really just shares useful information about how they set up their apprenticeship programs and really what they're looking for in potential apprentices.
Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing that information with us. And thank you again to Graham Trafford for taking the time to talk about his mentorship program. No question, Mott Electric is definitely an apprenticeship champion in Canada and sets a great example for other employers. So thank you to you both. We will be continuing the Future of Apprenticeship in Canada webinar series. The next topic will be on harmonization, and we'll be hosting that on Tuesday, May 16th at 1 p.m. Registration is not open yet, but it will be soon, so just be sure to visit the CAF website at our upcoming events page for more information that will be updated shortly. We do have lots of upcoming events in April and June. We'll be hosting multiple youth workshops in order to engage diverse youth in a conversation about careers in the skilled trades. We'll be collecting their views and experiences with an objective to developing a youth-driven strategy around employment and careers. The next workshop will be hosted on April 7th at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. On April 19th, we'll be in Campbell River. This session will be in partnership, that's actually April 12th, my apologies. We'll be in Campbell River, and this session is in partnership with the Industry Training Authority. We'll highlight the business case for hiring and training Aboriginal apprentices, employer best practices, and local stakeholder initiatives. You'll be able to discover the tools and resources available to help you implement effective strategies in your workplace. Join us for a live web event on April 19th to learn about the just released data from Statistics Canada's National Apprenticeship Survey. The survey aims to understand the factors and challenges that affect apprentices' completion and certification across all provinces and territories. As part of the Skills Canada national competition, we'll be co-hosting Building Blocks for Youth Success in the Trades. We'll look at 3 competency areas that young people must develop on the path to trade certification. So essential skills, technical skills, and employability skills, and brainstorm ways that the apprentice community can better ensure parents and educators know what it takes to excel as an apprentice. And lastly, we've also finally announced the dates for our National Biennial Conference, so be sure to save the date and join us in Montreal in June 2018. I just wanted to tell you quickly about our EPanel. So recruitments are underway for the Apprentices in Canada EPanel. The first report as a result of the EPanel, Apprentice Attitudes Toward Learning and Examinations, is available to members on our website. The panel will allow us to better understand apprentice experiences across the country by surveying apprentices online. We hope to learn more about the barriers apprentices experience so that targeted solutions can be developed and implemented. If you are interested in spreading the word and helping us recruit apprentices for the EPanel, please contact us following the webinar. I've also attached this EPanel ad to the handout section of your webinar so you can download that right away. And that is it for today's webinar. So thank you to everybody who joined us. Please be sure to join us on social media or sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with the latest events. And of course, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us directly after the webinar. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time.